guys, welcome back. Mickey Source Reads here, and we need to talk about Murder on the Iditarod Trail by Sue Henry. Because I am going to be frank, if I had read this one before I had read number 4, this is number 1 in the Alex Jensen Detective Murder series. If I had read this one before I read number 4, Death Takes Passage, I probably would not be reading Death Takes Passage, and I probably wouldn't be reading any of the others beforehand. But before I get into that, let me say I did enjoy this book. I enjoyed reading it. It's a decent murder mystery. It's going to keep you until the end. I say that I kind of had it figured out probably halfway through, but the fact that it just kept going and kept going and kept going kind of made it feel like I didn't maybe know what I knew and I hadn't really figured it out. But there's a good reason for it to keep going, and that is that's kind of the point of making it about the Iditarod, is there's nothing you can do on the trail. Like, while they're doing the race, you have all this tension building up and all this tension building up, and honestly, like, that really played to the reader too. So I really enjoyed that aspect. And if you're a big fan of Alaskan culture, if you're a big fan of the Iditarod, you would definitely enjoy this book. I feel like it covers it really well. Spoiler, warning, warning, dogs die. Dogs die in very violent ways. So if that's going to be an issue for you, it was kind of an issue for me, but a little less so because it was just a novel rather than actually having to watch it. But dogs will die. Be forewarned before you read this book. If you can't handle that, do not read this one. But most of the others, as far as I know, are safe just because this one has so many dogs in it and the focus is on the Iditarod, which of course is dog sled racing. Yeah, you're going to want to avoid it, but otherwise definitely pick it up and read it. My biggest problem, and let's get to the problem now because I wanted to love this book so much. I already loved Alex and I already loved Jesse reading Death Takes Passage. They were already in a relationship in that one, of course, because you can tell even from the beginning they're going to end up in a relationship in this one. But it's so much better once it's already established. I like, who is Jessie in this book? She had so much potential. She's an Iditarod racer. She's an accomplished breeder. She's all these kinds of things, but like that there's nothing else to her. She's honestly, even with the book focusing on her in certain aspects, she doesn't feel like more than a background character who you're supposed to love. Like, you can tell in the book that you're supposed to love her. Excuse me if you're hearing my dog playing with his dog toys. You can tell I love dogs, so that's why I love this book. But like, she feels like she's too much. It feels like you're being forced to really like her, and I'm not just like, I want to naturally like a character. I don't want to be told that there's nothing wrong with them except that, you know, they're too gung-ho. That's their flaw, you know. But that seems to be Jessie in this book, and it really wasn't in Death Takes Passage. She's very well rounded by book 4, but this one made it really rough to read about her and to really like believe in their relationship, because it was so, like, it was rushed, it was forced. There wasn't much to her as a character that didn't feel like it was really just having to build her up to be likable. And it's like, if you're going to force me to like her, I'm not going to like her that much. So that was my huge problem with this book, was that I just really didn't love Jessie. And a lot of the focus was on Jessie because it was her race. She was in danger, as the sleeve will tell you. And give me just a moment, because you are a turd. And my dog is very excited to be telling you about this book as well. But that said, my other biggest issue is, why do we have to do this focus on back and forth with the names? His name is Alex Jensen. It's either Alex or it's Jensen. I'm okay with it being the main character because he's also a detective, and it's kind of a sport thing to talk with, to reference each other with their last names. But the narrative goes back and forth on calling him Alex and Jensen, and it's weird. And even weirder, the narrative goes back and forth calling everybody by their first name or their last name. And I had a hard time keeping up with who is who when you're talking, you know, in one chapter, you're referring to him by his first name, and then the next chapter, which is just as important, suddenly you're calling him a different name. And I'm not that bright, clearly, but I'm thinking it's a different person, and it takes me a couple of sentences to realize, no, this is the same guy. And like, this was bad. This one was worse, and I didn't complain about it on this one, but reading this one, there are 100 passengers on this ship, and you're going to go back and forth on their first and last names. I don't have their names memorized. That's a huge problem. This one, like, at least it was a couple of the main sledders, the racers, and then some officials and his partner, his cop partner. So, like, it wasn't as bad, but it was still really hard, and it took me quite a couple of chapters to know kind of which were the main racers and which were the same main racers just being referred to by their last name. So, like, I don't get that. And I see that in, like, a lot of books. Like, we go back and forth from first and last name, and I guess it's so that you're not saying their name so many times, but it does make it hard to know, especially more secondary characters, who you're talking about. Otherwise, pacing was really good. It felt like I talked about earlier, it felt really pulled out. Like, it just kept going, and I'm not going to say, like, the story dragged, the book dragged, because there wasn't any dragging about it, unless you're counting the sleds being dragged by the dogs. There was no dragging. It just kept going, and, like, it never ended. And it was very Iditarod feeling, because as you guys know, it's a very long race. It's a very grueling race on the racers. But, like, oh my gosh, it didn't need to last the whole race. Or maybe it did, because this was actually a fairly small book, but it was an easy and quick read. Again, from the library. If you can use your local library, please do. I know that's really hard to get some of the newer books. I do have a couple of new books upon printing. I have to go pick up some of those which have just been released, and you will be seeing those released. I'll be doing reviews on those as soon as I'm done reading them. But this one, like, I'm glad I didn't start reading this. I'm glad I read it, and I will continue reading the Alex Jensen series. I think there are maybe 5 more. Probably more around the times that I will be going back to Alaska, because we're back and we don't have any plans to go back anytime soon, but I do want to return, and I'll probably pick these up as like a precursor to that, because they're definitely very good, informative novels that fill in that information in a very good narrative. And it's a fun murder mystery, but, like, that's basically the extent I can tell you. I'm not in love with the characters so much out of this one as I was out of Death Takes Passage, which definitely, even the heroics were kind of more exciting in that one than they were in this one. And it was the first one, so I can't falter that. But also, Sue Henry, rest your soul. I'm glad you definitely built up and improved after this one. But, you know, it's a good starting point. It's a good jump off point. Or maybe a good second one. Read number 2 first, maybe. But that's it, guys. I will catch you at the next one. And thank you so much for being here. All right. Bye.